Hello everyone, my name is Veronica. I'm an esthetician, but today that doesn't really matter because I just want to talk as people about a subject. I posted on Instagram a thing, and I just want to have that same conversation here, and I'm going to do makeup, the whole get ready with me thing. But we're going to talk about racism. We're going to do it. And in particular, we're going to talk about racism within the gay community and how that affects YouTube. And yeah, we're going to do it. And we're going to talk about inclusion marketing and yeah, we're going there. And before you dislike the video, before you leave me an angry hate comment, I have a favor to ask. Please just listen before you do that. And if at the end of the video you still hate me and disagree with everything, then fair game. But if you leave me a comment without watching the video, I will be able to tell, and I will probably just delete it, honestly, because I don't, just don't. And if people sandbag the video with dislikes, I'll just turn off the ratings. So I really don't do whatever. So I'm not a video essayist, and, I did want to talk about this subject. Coming back to YouTube, for me, is in part about this sort of thing. I wanted to talk about this subject and other subjects that relate to culture and discrimination and all of that in coming back. So this is not just coming out of nowhere. I have talked about this stuff in the past. But I'm going to read what I wrote on Instagram. This is about Jared Blandino from Too Faced, the co-founder of Too Faced, I believe. Over the course of this video, I will be saying things that will make you think of other people, that will make you think of YouTubers you know and love. Please do not read between any lines. Please do not put words in my mouth. Please do not twist what I am saying. I am going to be blunt. You don't need to interpret anything here. So if something that I say makes you think of a particular person, I'm not talking about them in particular. What I'm talking about is culture. And yeah, if I had something to say about someone in particular, I would just say it. But I'm generally not a gossip, so I'm just not really interested in calling people out. That said, this is my Instagram post, which I will put up on the screen. I'm not usually one for call-out culture, but Too Faced co-founder Jared Blandino posted a photo posing with a cake that said, "Rich Lives Matter," and just no. If you're not aware, Too Faced collaborated with Jackie Aina this year on a shade expansion to capitalize on something called inclusion marketing. While consulting, I've seen a lot of companies wanting to cash in on the white consumers who respond positively to this kind of marketing, with the black consumer, whose exclusion is being inverted and then exploited to sell things, being viewed as an afterthought. In other words, a lot of these brands do not care. The white gay community is notorious for its racist side. Speaking as an LGBTQ person. By the way, I'm not straight, in case anyone is confused about that. I always forget that coming out is still a thing. I'm not straight, never have been. Speaking as an LGBTQ person and longtime participant in the gay community of Los Angeles. And Jared is not just highlighting how bad his own culture is, but he's demonstrating how little thought goes into collaborating with and representing the black community in general. I don't think Jared is so dumb that he just doesn't connect Rich Lives Matter with mocking Black Lives Matter. He knew people would be pissed off, and that we'd post pictures of the new rich people themed collection that Too Faced came out with. Again, these companies don't care what anything means, they just know that it sells. Kitten jumped up on the table, so I'm gonna finish this while holding my kitten. Oh, where did I leave off? These companies don't care what anything means, they just know that it sells. It all sells. It all sells. Inclusion, blatant racism, classism, it all sells. But to you, the consumer, the media creator, the fellow human being, Black Lives Matter is not a joke. And it's not a slogan to be borrowed and riffed on. Black Lives Matter is life or death. And the issues Black Lives Matter confronts won't be solved with deeper foundation shades. There's a lot more to discuss when it comes to the exploitation of black culture in the cosmetics world. I recommend Julesy, who I will link in the video description, for some epic dissection of that ongoing phenomenon, which is not new by any means. Some brands legitimately do want to make the beauty space more inclusive, and you won't find them laughing over a bad publicity stunt cake. It's not in their marketing, but in their actions. So pay attention. And then I have a postscript that there is a new documentary on HBO about Sandra Bland, and you should go watch it. So the response to that post was positive because, there are no dislikes on Instagram. But yeah, I don't know how people are going to be on YouTube. I expect there are going to be people who clicked on this video on purpose and yet are going to leave comments complaining that they're unhappy I made this video. To those people, I say I believe the exit is there. You have free will and you clicked on this video, so please don't complain to me about it. To everyone else, I just want to talk. I'm not here to lecture you. If you are a fellow white person, you are not being very attacked right now. I just want to talk. And I think I want to start with saying that racism is not pass-fail. It's a culture, it's a system, and it is possible to be a good person while still contributing to it, either because you don't know better or because mistakes happen. Nobody is perfect. That is a truism for a reason. Perfection does not exist because everything is relative, everything is subjective. So no one's coming after you, no one is coming for you, which is one of the many phrases appropriated from the culture we were going to talk about today. But yeah, I just want to say that being a good person is its own reward. Most of the happiest people on earth will tell you that. So what are my credentials to talk about this subject? What makes me so special? I moved to Los Angeles when I was a teenager. This is CYO Lifeproof Foundation in 101 mixed with Makeup Forever HD in R210. I moved to Los Angeles as a teenager and very quickly started performing in nightclubs with drag queens that were promoted by gay men in what we used to ubiquitously refer to as the gay community of Los Angeles, which we nowadays more refer to as the LGBTQ community. And if you are not American or North American, you will hear me use the term queer. That is a term we use kind of as a catch-all for people who are not straight, because LGBT is not an inclusive term. It leaves out a lot of people, including me. I am, in the words of one of my favorite video essayists, Lindsay Ellis, a
filthy Q.
So nowadays we say LGBTQ+, but anyone who is part of this culture in Los Angeles generally knows that West Hollywood has predominantly revolved around the gay men. So I used to perform with them, and I did for years. Worked with a lot of big names in drag. That extends beyond the world of RuPaul's Drag Race, because that is not the entire world of drag. A lot of people from the bi-coastal gay community, LGBTQ community. When I talk about the gay culture in Los Angeles being about white gay men, I mean it. So that was then, and you would think this would be now, and that a city like Los Angeles would not have a huge problem with racism in one of its marginalized communities, but it does. In fact, it is such a thing that, going back to Drag Race, drag queen Kimchi performed a song about it on, what season was that? Was that season 8? It's the one with Fat Femme and Asian. That is a reference to the racism and body shaming of the gay community. So this is a thing, racism in the gay community. It's worse on the gay men's side. It is present amongst us queer women as well. But this is not a new phenomenon, and none of us in the community are surprised to hear about it, sadly. So what did Jared do that was so bad? It's just a cake. It's just an Instagram photo. You're overreacting. No, I'm not at all. Because Black Lives Matter is a movement about survival and about equality and about respect. And I mean, anytime anyone appropriates Black Lives Matter for whatever joke they're trying to make, like he did in that cake. God, that's so stupid. They're just showing that they do not respect what Black Lives Matter means. They are pulling a Pepsi thinking that it's just a matter of a Kardashian handing out a cool beverage on a sunny day. And then everybody will get along. Oh, it's so hilarious. But no, unfortunately, that's not the case. This is a combination of Colourpop, whatchamacallit? No Filter Concealer in Fair Neutral 10 and Makeup Forever HD in R20. So yeah, it's not funny. It's not a joke. Black Lives Matter is not a joke. It is not up for grabs. And if you disagree with me and you're not black, then keep listening. If you're black and you want to disagree with me, then you're right. But yeah, it's kind of a big deal. Why is it a big deal, Veronica? Well, because of Too Faced's inclusion marketing. I mean, never minding the fact that Jared is a public figure and that sort of thing is just gross in general, but Too Faced launched an expansion to their shade range using Jackie Aina in their campaigns. So it was a collaboration with Jackie Aina to be woke, I guess, is what they were going for. Another word appropriated from Black culture. So yeah, they collaborated with Jackie Aina. This is not about Jackie. None of this is her fault. And she may disagree with me, I don't know. But they released this shade expansion this year, as so many brands have since Fenty launched, to get in on that sweet, sweet diversity money. When in reality, a lot of these companies, and I'm speaking from experience as a consultant, don't care about anyone but the white consumer viewing these ads. They're not really stressing about the money they might lose from black consumers, even though black consumers spend a lot of money on cosmetics. I have a blog post with some figures on that. I wrote a blog post about colorism years ago. I will link that too. That was one of the videos I recorded and didn't think was good enough to upload in 2015, if you're curious, because people ask about that sometimes. So yeah, Too Faced cashed in on inclusion marketing, and now Jared's posting with an actual cake. Like, seriously, be more subtle. Posting with a cake that says Rich Lives Matter, because Too Faced is launching a rich people collection. And oh, isn't that just so droll? What I want to talk about, now that we've established how gross that is, oh, kitten. What I want to talk about is the fact that the culture of queer and trans people of color has been appropriated by white people in the queer community and then turned mainstream. And this has been going on for a long time. And a lot of the very cool lingo you hear on YouTube, words like shook and lit, anyone talking about wigs being snatched, hunty, oh god, all that sort of stuff that your favorite white YouTubers are doing comes from ball culture. It comes from queer and trans people of color. And this isn't news. People in our culture have known for a long time that this is a thing that has been going on. And I've even had a conversation with a popular drag queen who is often the first to come to mind when anyone talks that way, about the fact that when you are a white person who is appropriating that culture, there are going to be some people who don't like you because of it. And you just kind of have to deal with that and not be defensive. Because the thing about being a white person in conversations about racism is it doesn't matter if you're one of the good ones. If you were one of the good ones, you wouldn't need to defend yourself because you're not being attacked. It's not about you. It's about your culture. And if someone's talking directly to you about something you've done, then I guess that's about you. But more importantly, it's about the people you're affecting. So what I told her was that if you understand where the culture comes from, because she does, then you should understand why some people are just going to inherently dislike you for making it your own. So maybe just listen. You know, that's kind of the point that I was trying to make in the beginning of this video, is that it's not about coming for anybody, but it's about listening. If you're one of the good ones, just listen. We've all had our #NotAllWhitePeople moment. But what matters is what you do after. So Yeah, YouTube. I love YouTube. I really do. And I have nothing against the people who use this language that doesn't belong to them, because most of them are young and they don't know where it comes from. This is Balance and Brighten porcelain. Most of them don't know where it comes from. They don't know that the white gay men they are appropriating this sass from have appropriated it from elsewhere. And a lot of the gay men don't even know where they got it from because they are young as well. And they got it from older white gay men who picked it up wherever. And it's just kind of a self-perpetuating thing. And if no one ever talks about it, then no one ever knows that it's a thing. And it's not inherently problematic on its own, to borrow a phrase from Lindsay Ellis again. This is not to say thing good or thing bad, but rather thing exists. There are a lot of white gay men in the beauty space who have been using and will probably still use language appropriated from queer and trans people of color and from the Black community at large. In response to me making that post on Instagram, a young gentleman commented, "We love a woke queen." And while I appreciate that, I pointed out that woke queen comes from Black culture. So if you're gonna say stuff like that, maybe say it to Black women. You know, like, maybe don't go calling the palest white person on earth a woke queen, because I do appreciate it, and I appreciate, you know, the reception, but I want to be consistent with this message, you know? And again, it's not about being perfect. I'm not coming for that individual. It's very sweet, and I really appreciate it, and I really hope that this is received well, and that I don't just come off as a crotchety old lady, because since I am in my 30s, gasp! Oh my god, 30s? I'm allowed to be a crotchety old lady on YouTube. So yeah, I always knew in coming back that I was going to talk about stuff like this. This is not coming out of nowhere, but this video might maybe somewhat garbage relative to people like Julesy who actually talk about it well. I just am in a position as a white person and as a queer white person to say something about it because I know about this subject, relatively speaking. I know more than the average white person does, and it's not Jackie Ina's job to educate everyone on Earth who watches beauty YouTube videos, and people are not necessarily going to find someone like Julesy and watch her videos which are about African American culture are not necessarily going to be things that white beauty YouTube viewers click on. So yeah, here I am clumsily talking about it. Well, kind of doing makeup, but not really. I just didn't want to be sitting here talking at a microphone. And I wanted to do something inspired by my Janelle Monáe dirty computer hoodie, because this is what I was wearing. I don't usually do makeup when I'm wearing this hoodie because I have not washed it since the concert, and I don't want to. Something that Black people who speak on culture say frequently is that there's a big difference between loving Black culture and loving Black people. Historically, white people in the United States have loved Black culture, and in particular have loved taking whatever they wanted from Black culture and then taking credit for it, but historically have not, on the whole, loved Black people, who are, let's not forget, by and large the descendants of slaves brought to North America by colonizing slave traders. So that's still a thing. Our race as white European descendants on the continent of North America is linked to slavery forever. That's just a thing. And I don't have slaves. You probably don't have slaves. We don't need to go there. It's just a thing that exists. Thing exists. So we kind of would be good as people to be mindful of when we use things like language that don't belong to us. When we, I don't know, want to put a message on a cake for our boyfriend because it's his birthday and we have a cosmetics company with a new line coming out for the holidays centered around celebrating rich people, maybe we should not borrow Black Lives Matter for that cake. And by maybe, I mean definitely. I'm just going to put all of the eyeshadows that I use in the video description because this isn't a tutorial and I don't even know if I'm going to do anything remotely good. But yeah, I don't want to get distracted. So yeah, that will be in the video description if anyone cares. So yeah, there's a difference between loving Black culture and loving Black people. You can also see this with professional sports. You know, there's a big difference between loving the NFL and loving a Black man in the NFL for standing up for himself and his culture. Big difference. There are a lot of racist people, openly racist people, not just like casually racist, but openly racist people who love professional sports and are happy to use those athletes in their fantasy football teams. But if any of them dare to be human, well, that's where we have problems. Big difference between loving Black culture and loving Black people. That's why Justin Timberlake became America's sweetheart after ripping off Janet Jackson's clothing during the Super Bowl. And she was ostracized until like 8 minutes ago. So yes, there is a big difference between loving Black people and loving Black culture, which is not something I came up with, but rather something that Black people have been saying for quite a long time. Which leads me to my next point. I don't know that I'm really making points. These are just things I want to talk about. Which is another thing that Black people, and especially Black women, talk about all the time, which is emulating aspects of Black aesthetics and Black beauty without attributing or even respecting Black people. Case in point, lip fillers, butt implants, and so on. Again, there are plenty of people who are experts on this subject and who can talk about them with far more information and experience than I am presently. But it's worth mentioning that a lot of the popular aesthetics on Instagram and YouTube right now, a lot of that Kardashian aesthetic that is so popular with young white women right now, can be traced to wanting to embrace certain aspects of the way Black women look without actually embracing Black women as human beings and equals. Now you might be thinking at this point, I'm not doing any of that. I got lip filler because I just wanted big lips. It's okay. You're not being attacked right now. This is not what being attacked feels like. An individual person getting lip fillers or butt implants is not the point. The point is that there is a trend of cats again. There is a trend of white people emulating aspects of Black aesthetic while wanting to retain all of the whiteness that goes with being white. And by that I mean privilege. That's the word I meant to use. Yeah, it's basically wanting to have the curvy body and the big luscious lips without any of the burden of being scared for your life when a police officer stops you. But Veronica, I'm other thing that is not bad. Well, again, viewer, that's not the point. The point is just to listen and talk and not defend yourself constantly. Because when you're busy defending yourself, you're not listening. So am I saying that no one should have lip implants, or that no one should have big butts, or that no one should say shook, or oh, my wig just flew off? No, that's not what I'm saying. I will leave it to the individual to determine what is right for them, as is the case with the drag queen I mentioned, who is, I don't think, a bad person at all, but who definitely is not going to change the way she speaks. And she knows where all of that language comes from. She just has a hard time not jumping out to defend herself when people talk about her using that language. And I get it, but the point is maybe knock it off. You don't need to defend yourself because there's no punishment here. You're not being attacked. Black culture is being attacked. Black Lives Matter as a serious movement for equality and survival is being attacked by an idiot white dude on Instagram who has a company releasing products called Pretty Rich. Like, that's so dumb. Jared, it's so dumb. No, you could say Jared's not killing anybody, or you could just disagree about, whether or not it's acceptable for police officers to execute American citizens like Philando Castile, who did nothing except try to disclose in a calm manner to a police officer that he had a firearm. You could say, Jared's not responsible for that. He just made a joke. Or he blah, blah, blah. He could have not even noticed that the cake had writing on it for all I know, but he posted the photo. It's just not possible. It's not possible that he didn't know what he was posting. At this point in time, in nearly 2019, it's not possible. I'm just going to say that. If you put something Lives Matter on a cake and post it to Instagram, you know what you're doing. If you've never done something that stupid and that vulgar, then great, congratulations, you don't get a medal. You don't get a medal for just being a decent human being. I'm sorry, but that's the way life is. You don't get a medal for doing the bare minimum for other people, which is treating them with a modicum of respect. That's not how life works. So every time someone talks about race, you don't need to jump forward as a white person and be like, I'm not that white person. Stop talking about me, because I don't know you. I'm talking about culture. Black people are usually talking about culture, or they name people specifically, because there are plenty of white people who enjoy getting up on TV, saying horrific things, and then arguing about what those things mean after the fact. If you are not one of those white people, calm down. No one's coming for you. I just want to mention that I'm using the electric palette, and I know that this palette is really old, and I don't care. I am not throwing it away, ever. I don't care if my eyeballs fall out of my head, because I actually bought this palette right before Pride 2016, which, if you are a queer person, you should remember was the year of the Orlando Pulse nightclub shooting. Which has nothing to do with this palette, but a lot to do with Pride 2016. And it's also worth mentioning that during Pride 2016, I met a person who I believe has since identified as trans and male, so I will refer to him as him. I met a person who was Black and who I got to know a little bit, and who disagrees with a lot of the things that I'm saying. That's a thing that happens, and when that happens, it's certainly not my job as a white person. As passionate as I am about this stuff, it's not my job to correct any person of color who disagrees. I'm not a spokesperson for this problem. I'm just someone with a platform. And so it is entirely possible that any given individual could disagree with all of the things that I'm saying while being a person of color and or queer and or trans. Queer and trans are, did I explain this already? Queer and trans are often used together because queer refers to sexuality and trans refers to gender. And there are straight trans people and queer trans people, and non-trans queer people. That's why I say queer and trans, or why people say queer and trans. I may have said that earlier, I don't remember. It's really late. It's like 1:30 in the morning. Anyway, so what is there to be done oh, everything's so horrible, why bother? Well, like I said at the beginning of the video, being a good person is its own reward. A lot of people will tell you that. Giving back to the planet, being kind to other people, helping other people, and just generally being a good person is rewarding in and of itself. I don't mean that in like a figurative way. I mean that it makes people feel better about life. It is not particularly healthy to be a bigot. I'm just gonna put that out there. It has a way of eating away at people, and that the kind of fear that fuels common bigotry is the sort of thing that eats people alive and gives people heart attacks, and it affects how they treat their families and affects their relationships. And you don't need to react to that with defensiveness. I'm not calling anyone a bigot. I'm just saying bigotry as a thing is not good for human beings. Do any of the rest of you ever feel like because of Instagram, you no longer know if you're good at anything? Like, I used to be a working makeup artist. In addition to being an esthetician, like I've done a lot of stuff. I used to be an actual makeup artist, and nowadays I look at Instagram and I'm like, how do you lipstick? I was good at makeup. Like, I'm good at makeup, right? I know how to put on makeup, right? I didn't imagine all of that. Did I? Instagram is gaslighting me. Everyone on Instagram is just so good at everything. Everything, like, just, people are just so good at things. They're good at everything. Makeup, painting, singing, improvising raps about cats. People are just so good at things. It makes me wonder, like, have I ever been good at anything? Like, I think so. Let's talk about makeup for a second to break the tension, shall we? I am using a metallic teal color called Fringe right there to do some business in my outer V. And now I'm going to take a brush and dip it into a taupey beige color and blend. There's a makeup tip for you. Oh, I used to be so good at doing like theatrical, creative makeup, and then Instagram happened and I just don't know what even are things. But yeah, gay culture, that's a thing. And it's a thing that has impacted YouTube in, I wouldn't say a surprising way. You know, I'm not like surprised because we love the gays. Just kind of a thing. Like, gay culture is pretty awesome. And I am one of those people who shows up to Pride wearing my colors. And I get up to debauchery with the rest of the queers, and that's good. The thing is, there's this whole other side to, in particular, white queer culture that you don't see at Pride, and that you don't see on Drag Race, because it doesn't want to interact with the rest of us, and that is the racist side. Among white gay men, it is pretty common to fetishize black men, to make the usual kinds of innuendos, let's say, about what may or may not be in a black man's trousers, because that's original. So it's common to fetishize black men aesthetically. Sorry, cat's bumping into the lights. And yet it's also common to ostracize people, all kinds of people, but especially people of color and black men, for socioeconomic reasons. How is that even a thing? Well, it is. There are a lot of complex and overlapping areas that may not make a lot of sense, but they exist, and that's the point of talking about them. Thing exists. In response to my Instagram posts, I got comments from other queer people thanking me for calling out the fact that white queer culture can be pretty damn racist. And it's a thing, and it's not something that people are talking about in this space. There are a lot of things that people are not talking about in this space, but we're talking about this right now because of Jared and his cake. So this is what you should know. If you are a straight person watching this and you have no idea what I'm talking about, or if you are a young, gay, white person watching this, just a white person in general watching this, discrimination of people of color, and in particular black people, doesn't stop in the gay community just because we're queers. It keeps going. The kind of discrimination that black men face in regular life carries over to queer life. The kind of fetishization and the kind of discrimination for stupid reasons like assumption about socioeconomic status and wealth and background and all those things that affect black people in job interviews and college applications and getting housing. You know, the fact that it's a documented fact that having a black sounding name is a disadvantage when submitting a resume. Those things don't stop just because people in a culture are homosexuals. Just like sexism doesn't stop just because men are attracted to each other. It's possible to be gay and sexist at the same time, unfortunately. I have had gay men in that nightclub space I was talking about literally walk into me, like look over my head, which is difficult to do because I'm 6 feet tall, and then walk into me. This has happened multiple times because there, at least at the time, was a little thing that certain gay men like to do where they would pretend that bio women, biological women who are not drag queens, weren't there. They would just pretend we weren't even there. It was fun. Especially fun for me since I am a queer woman. But no one in that space talked about us. Women's sexuality was never brought up. It was just all about the gay men's and the straight people who were interested in what the gay men's were doing. And that is not an indictment of gay culture. It's just saying the thing exists. I can make up. I can do makeup. I can make up, right? Wow. Okay, I can't do makeup. Never mind. The thing that I hear a lot among white people when talking about racism is this sort of defeatist attitude of like, well, everyone thinks I'm racist and everyone hates me, so why should I bother doing anything? And, you know, that relates to what I was talking about at the beginning, how, you know, it's really not about seeking reward and being a good person is rewarding unto itself. But also, I think that there's just not a lot of conversation about how to change and what that looks like. And this is what changing looks like. You take notice of the things you're doing because you stop talking for a second and listen to what other people are saying so that you can learn what it is that you're doing that is making people unhappy and affecting them in negative, potentially deadly ways long enough to analyze your behavior and say, okay, well, what can I do differently? And usually, through listening, you can come up with some stuff. Like, using YouTube as an example, it's not really the point that every white person stop using language that is not theirs. It is much more the point that people should be more inclined to talk about things that matter. And I'm not saying that because I want everyone on YouTube to start talking about politics all the time. Don't worry. I agree. Like, there are times I just want to shut my brain off and watch somebody talk about whether or not they like an eyeshadow palette. Oh, wait. No, there's politics in that too, because if you are a woman in your 30s and you talk about an eyeshadow palette that you don't like, it's possible that people will leave comments telling you that they're happy you are having trouble bearing children. Everything's political. It always has been. The fact that people say, like, oh, I don't want to talk about politics, it doesn't mean that things aren't already political. And I don't mean, like, just about politicians. I mean the politics of life, the politics of race, the politics of gender, the politics of everything. It's everywhere. So freaking talk about it. Let's stop pretending that it's not real and just talk about it like people sometimes. Let's acknowledge that racism isn't just about foundation colors. Let's acknowledge that as white people, supporting brands who come out with more foundation shades isn't activism. It's not a one-to-one thing of like, you've done something bad and now you need to do something good. It's just about learning. It's about learning what affects people, learning what they have to say you can do better, and then trying. And you're gonna mess up sometimes. And people are gonna dislike you sometimes. I imagine plenty of people will dislike me for this. I'm in a kind of unique position where I can do whatever I want because I disappeared for 3 years, and so I kind of get to start over. A lot of people are not necessarily in that position. They may face a significant amount of backlash for bringing up topics of race out of seemingly nowhere, even though a lot of people think about this stuff when they're not on camera. It's just people are afraid to talk about it, and the backlash is why. The angry comments are why. The people telling you to kill yourself because you're talking about racism or sexism or whatever, or the people who may go tell Jared to go kill himself in retribution for him doing something stupid and racist. Like, you know, that's why people don't get into it. And it's important to look at that from both sides. It's important to look at it from the creator side and be like, yeah, there's a backlash, but there's also a tremendous upside. And for people like myself, i.e. white people, to talk about racism is not the end of the world. You're gonna piss off some people who don't want to talk about race, and that's the worst of it. Whereas for people like, using Jackie Aina as an example because she's very open and vocal about stuff, she has been getting hate for years about just talking about makeup. Jackie's been through it, and no matter what anyone says in response to this video, I'll be fine. I'm fine. Question is, what do we do with these platforms that we have? Do we just sell stuff? Do we just put makeup on our faces and pretend that there are no beauty standards? There is no discrimination of any kind going on. There is no bias towards certain kinds of features. There's no culture at play that determines what is and is not good. And behind that culture, there's definitely no bias of race or class. Do we just pretend that that's all true forever? I don't think so. I think YouTube is going in this direction where people are just gonna be more honest about who they are. The stakes are a lot higher right now than they were 8 years ago. And skincare in particular, very, very political. Race is a huge, huge thing in the skincare world, but I think of makeup and skincare being separate. Most people probably don't. But yeah, it's always been political. The fact that people weren't making dedicated videos about it doesn't mean it wasn't political before. It always was. It always was. I have absolutely no idea what I'm doing. I am just like thinking about the colors and the sweatshirt and thinking like, how do I put all of these on my eye and have it not look like garbage? You put a dusty mauve on top of them. That's what you do. Why is my camera not focusing? I'm right here, camera. I don't know, man. It's not about having one solution. It's not about being perfect. It's not about punishment. It's not about mobs with pitchforks. It's not about any of that. It's just about being a decent human being. It's about thinking of other people before you do something. And when you do something that other people say is harmful, it's about listening to them and being like, oh, I did a thing that was harmful. Let me learn from that. right? Like why is that so hard? I don't get it. Like, I'm not trying to be mean for anyone who's still watching this. I don't imagine there's anyone still watching this. I'm not trying to be mean. Like, I legitimately am not trying to lecture anybody right now. I'm just trying to explain some stuff that I don't think a lot of people understand. It is possible to change. It is possible to become a different person and to regard other people with more respect, to regard Black culture with more reverence. It's possible to not give up your identity as a person and to not take on the burden of, like, the fact that our ancestors probably owned slaves. That's not the point. The point is just talking about it. Just stop pretending like it's not real. Stop pretending like your cake is okay, Jared. Your cake's not okay. And when people tell you that your cake's not okay, just listen to them. And can we talk about apologies for a second? Can we talk about how useless apologies are? Apologies are the most useless thing on earth. There's a quote from a play I really like called The Pavilion. Let me see if I can get this right. Sorry is something you say when nothing else can happen. Apologizing is so useless. You should stop accepting the word sorry when you should be accepting change. What I mean is this culture of just doing terrible things, knowing that you can be like, I sincerely apologize for my actions, / it was the intern. I'm just freaking so sick of it. I don't like it in my personal life. If you want to get on my bad side, do some bullshit and apologize to me. Apologize and then get mad at me for not accepting your apology. That's pretty much the fastest way to get on my shit list in real life. I cannot stand people who go around just doing the same thing over and over and then apologizing for it like that changes anything. If you want to improve the kind of people you keep around you, look for people who don't need to apologize constantly. There is this question on OkCupid. Oh my God, you can learn so much about culture from the OkCupid question analyses. But there's a question on OkCupid that says, what is it? It's like, would you rather date someone who makes mistakes constantly but apologizes, or someone who rarely makes mistakes but doesn't apologize? And almost everyone says they would rather be with the person who is constantly messing up but apologizes for it. And I'm like, no, screw that. I want the person who actually thinks about what they're doing, because the word sorry doesn't mean anything if you have to say it over and over. So even if Jared apologizes for his insensitive Instagram story post with the cake, God, it's not good enough. It's just not. You want to be absolved of any wrongdoing immediately after you do the wrong and then do the same thing going forward. It's not good enough. Stop listening to people say they're sorry and start looking at their actions. You want to support companies that are good and actually care about people? Look at their actions. Look at who they hire. Look at who represents them. Look at models they've fired for various reasons. Look at actions, because the words come from publicists. The words come from people who have studied how to communicate favorably with the public, whereas the actions tend to speak the truth. But let's talk about change. What does change actually look like? It's turning very messy on purpose. I gotta get to the point of lashes. I've been filming for like an hour and a half already, but I have yet to get to like the eyeliner and lashes portion, which is, as everyone knows, the most important portion of any ridiculous eye look. So what does change look like? Change looks like doing something different, not saying you're sorry over and over. It means doing something different, and that takes time. People are very quick to forgive and forget sometimes. White people are with other white people, specifically, when in reality, it takes time to change. It takes time to show that you're a different person, because it can't just be for show. That's the point. It can't just be a production that you're putting on. And people who pay attention notice that. They notice over the long term what someone is or is not doing anymore. You know, that is the stuff that matters. Change takes time. Changing how other people perceive you takes time because it's about how you treat other people. It's not just about you. It's not just like setting a weight loss goal and then hitting a mark on your scale and all of that. It's about other people, and that's complicated. That's something you can't control, and you cannot go into changing yourself for the better when it comes to racism and any form of discrimination. You can't go into it thinking, I'm going to get some reward. I'm going to get some approval. I'm going to get, a pat on the head from these people I've hurt. That's not the point, first of all, but it also may never happen. Those people may hate you forever because you did some shit to them. So don't try to change. Just change. Change because being a good person is its own reward. It's pretty rare that someone who is not the P word, problematic, ends up in these situations. And I don't think it's a coincidence that Jared has had so many situations with so many people. It's indicative of a certain disposition, a certain carelessness, a social carelessness, if you will. And I don't know Jared. Doesn't matter. I don't think he cares who I am. But certainly other people have had their run-ins and their stories. I don't tend to get involved. I don't tend to be a gossip. Again, I'm not really interested. But when you post a cake that says Rich Lives Matter and you have a history of starting things with people, of having public fights with people, of being disrespectful, honey, come on, you're not fooling anybody. You gotta change if you want anyone to take you seriously. Or you can just stick with whatever demographic is putting up with you currently and let that be that. This eyeliner, sadly, is not available, so this will not be in the video description. So what do you do if you're a white person and someone confronts you about something you've done that affected them in a negative way because you are white and they are not, i.e. you've done some problematic shit? What do? Someone's mad. Someone's confronting you, maybe yelling at you. First of all, be honest with yourself. Did you do some shit? Did you do the thing? If yes, then listen to what they're saying. And if you don't want to do that thing that negatively affects people, then the next time you are in a similar situation, think before you act. And when it comes to racism, we, as white people, do not get to decide what is and is not harmful. Oh, that seems unfair? Well, would you like to take on everything that comes with not being white in the United States? No, you wouldn't? Okay, well, life's not fair. People are dying for no reason other than being black. Imagine how they feel. Imagine how Philando Castile's family felt watching him get shot right in front of them for doing nothing. You're fine. Having to mildly alter your behavior in order to not hurt other people is not the worst thing that's ever happened to you. And if it is, then I'm so jealous. And I don't say that to be patronizing. I'm saying that because it really is a luxury to not have to think about this stuff. It really is a luxury to be able to say, I don't want to talk about politics. Because other people don't get to do that all the time. And that's something that we don't think about. We get to say, boo, you're making everything about race, because we don't have to think about race. Unless someone else brings it up, we don't have to think about it. That's the point. Jared doesn't have to think about his race unless he posts a stupid picture of a cake that says Rich Lives Matter. And that's only thinking about it because he's done something that hurts other people. Oh my god. What am I doing to my face? Let's talk about being perfect for a second on that note. We talked about how it's not possible to be perfect, and it's certainly not possible to be perfect all the time. You're gonna make mistakes. If you are committed to changing the way you treat other people, you're still going to make mistakes. I hate to break it to you. You are going to offend people. Sometimes you may upset people when you feel like you haven't even done anything, but it doesn't matter because the hurt is already there. The culture already had its effect, and when you are a member of a culture that benefits from a culture that your culture harms, you don't necessarily get to pick when the time is right to discuss things. A lot of times, white Americans like to derail conversations about race by either deflecting the conversation onto criticisms of Black culture or whatever their perception of fault is with a particular group of people, or they like to shift the conversation outside of their culture by saying other people had slaves too, and stuff like that. Really not the point. We're not talking about everybody at every point in time in all of history in this conversation. I am a queer white American talking in this moment to fellow white and or queer Americans about the fact that this phenomenon of stealing culture and emulating the parts of Black culture that we like while ignoring the parts that we don't like, or ostracizing Black people while embracing their creativity for ourselves, it's something that happens here on YouTube as well. It's not just like some myth in the annals of cultural anthropology. It's not just something that happened with jazz and Chuck Berry. It's something that happens in our space here. I just wanted to talk about it. I just wanted to raise your eyebrow on the issue, since I made that post on Instagram and some people were like, yes, queen! And I was like, that's from Black culture. Let's talk about it. You know, it's not inherently bad to use language or wear clothes or embrace an aesthetic of Black culture. It is not inherently bad unto itself. And it's not mine. I cannot give or revoke permission on the subject. Like, I can't tell you that it is okay or that it is not okay. What I can tell you is that it happens. And that when it comes to gay white men, it happens a lot. And that is what makes those elements of culture go mainstream. It's why you now have straight white women saying that their wig is being snatched. And they don't even know what that means. Like, I laugh about it because, you know, I get it. I get it from both sides. Like, there are just a lot of young people hearing these phrases and they sound cool or they sound funny or whatever. And yes, Black culture is very creative and there's always been a sense of humor to it that white people don't really have. I didn't bring scissors out with me, so I'm going to trim these lashes with overkill. Okay, my battery died, which is for the best because it's now past 3 a.m. and these eyelashes had no chill. They have moved into my apartment and co-signed my lease. Anyway, did my brows, added some blush. Actually, am I hallucinating or is this actually not bad? Or is it just so late that I don't know what's good anymore? I was trying to kind of emulate the sort of thing I would wear to a club in yon gay community. Hence the no-chill lashes. Now I'm going to put some highlighter on my face. I'm using this one. It's a unicorn-y thing. Because I'm gay. I'm not. I'm pansexual, but whatever. There's no how to not be racist handbook. But there are simple things that people can do to do better. And it starts with never using the N-word ever, under any circumstances. Pretty sure that is common knowledge. But with regards to the language and things like, come through, sis, yes, queen, work, all that stuff. If you're a white girl maybe don't talk about your wig getting snatched. But also, it's possible to appreciate a culture without degrading it by virtue of appreciating it, if that makes sense. Oh my god, it's so late. Basically, don't try to emulate a black person. You know, you can say things like, I'm shook. You don't have to try to be like, I'm shook. You don't have to morph from a Midwestern white boy to a Southern black woman. You know, you can still have fun with language and culture, and it doesn't have to be ignorant, I think is the word. You can be willful about things. You can say things on purpose instead of just repeating things you hear. You can learn what things mean. You can learn about history and culture and ball culture. You can watch more black content creators. Go watch Julesy. Go discover content on YouTube. When people are talking about racism near you, like on Twitter or Facebook or Instagram or YouTube or anywhere, you can stop and listen. Or read. You can not jump into the conversation or correct people or defend the honor of white people. You can just listen. You can go on Twitter and just read conversations. You don't actually have to participate. I know, weird. It's not a straight path from A to B. This is a Sephora lip liner I just got. It's really pretty. It's called Bellflower. It's not a straight path from A to B. It's not a one-to-one thing where you do one good thing and get one cookie in return. It's about not hurting people. It's about not adding more pain to the world, and that is its own reward. I keep saying this, being a good person is its own reward. Because not hurting people is rewarding. And speaking of black creators, you should watch Dirty Computer, which is an emotion picture by Janelle Monáe. Available for free on YouTube. It's about 45 minutes long, I think, and it's so good. So good. What is your favorite song from that album, if you are a Janelle Monáe fandroid? I am torn. Crazy Classic Life, I think, is mine. But I Like That is also my favorite. Oh, I love that whole album. It's so good. Django James also, like, brilliant. But it would feel like disingenuous for me to claim Django Jane as my favorite song from that album, because I'm so white. Yeah, just go forth and be good. You're capable of so much good. Everyone is. It just takes, like, the tiniest little bit of effort, and it builds over time. You become good through your actions, and you can do it. I know you can, because I've seen it. Not everyone's gonna like you. You can't make everyone happy, but you can just try not to be garbage. Jared, you can not make fun of Black Lives Matter on a cake. Jared. All right, it is actually 4 a.m. My skin is furious with me for doing this so late at night, but I actually kind of like my makeup. What? Did I do something okay? Not that it matters, but like, I'm not crazy, right? Like, this is okay. It's not bad. Dirty Computer! Anyway, I hope this was something to someone. I don't know. It's late. I just, yeah, I can't be on YouTube if I don't talk about this stuff. This is who I am. People unsubscribe, whatever, I don't really care. But more importantly, share this information. If you want to share the video, share the video. If you want to transcribe me verbatim for the 5 hours I've been talking and take credit for it on Facebook, I genuinely don't care. Can we please just stop stealing from black culture while making black people targets and punchlines? That's all I'm saying. Anyway, going to bed. Bye!